Hello, everyone. Welcome to Grid Live Pre-Race. My name is Joe Samaniego, and with me we have Ben Schneider from Grid Encore and NASCAR.info, Isha Azim from Racing with Isha, and Jackson Todd from 36xracing.com. Very excited to have everyone here. A big thank you to our Patreon investors, Colin, Michelle, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew. You too can invest in the Grid Network. Link in the video description. You'll get some Grid Network stickers mailed out to you as a thank you. And if you want to do a one-time investment, super chat, buy me a coffee, $10 or more, and you'll get the Grid Network stickers mailed out to you. Get on the leaderboard. Jason leads with 2 cups of coffee and 1 super chat. And the easiest way to support us, hit the bell icon, subscribe to us right here on YouTube. We're getting so close to our goal of 1,000 subscribers. And we got to start off with a recap. We've done this before for MotoGP Supercars, but the first time for Formula One. Formula One, they had the Bahrain Grand Prix to kick off the season, and it's the relentless continuation of the Red Bull dominance continues. A 1-2 finish. So once again, Max Verstappen taking the win, career win number 55, getting closer to Michael Schumacher and Lewis Hamilton. So right now, sole position of third place in the all-time win list. Nobody had anything from Max Verstappen. In fact, after the first lap, he had over a 1 second lead. Before the race, after testing, Fernando Alonso, he said with this race, 19 drivers would essentially know that their chance to win the Drivers' Championship was over. Isha, starting with you, is it too early to crown Max the champion, or does Max essentially have one hand on that championship?
Joe, I think that when it comes to Max, it's never too early. You didn't even have to watch the whole race, as Ben was pointing out earlier. Just going into that first turn, when Max came out in the front, you knew automatically that Max was going to win. And then at one point, he was, I believe, over 35 seconds ahead of whoever was driving in second place, which was Checo, his own teammate, right in the same car. So I think it's very, very obvious that 2024 is also Max's year, and that he's also going to win the championship this year.
Yeah, I was thinking he's made it out of turn one. Thought, all right, maybe he's got a chance. I gave him about 10 laps to see if something was going to go wrong, but no, Max Verstappen did his thing. I think it's. I mean, come on, he won. It wasn't the broadcast barely mentioned it for the first bit of the race. He was gone and in his own league again. Yeah, I think Max Verstappen will capture another championship this year.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. I knew as soon as he made it through the first corner cleanly that the only way he was not going to win this race was if the engine let go. I mean, they are just so far ahead. And I think they even mentioned this on the broadcast to put it into perspective. Last year, he won this race by roughly 12 seconds. This year, he won the race by 22 seconds. So if anything, they're even ahead of where they were last year. All the talk about Max not being happy in practice and the car not performing how he would like. I think Red Bull was either doing a little bit of sandbagging or they weren't running hot laps for whatever reason. You see them on the screen right there. They have 26 points for Max, 18 for Checo. Max picked up the fastest lap as well. They picked up the full 44 points they could, and I think that's going to be the story at most of the races, maybe even all the races this year. We'll see. They came up one race short of the perfect season last year. Obviously, there's only one team that can still do that. It's Red Bull Racing, and they look in prime position to make another run at winning at least 20 races this year, like we were talking about earlier this week.
Now, Max Verstappen dominated the race. Behind him, his teammate, we saw Sergio Perez. He had essentially a lot of pressure last year. This is going to be a big year for him to try to deliver, because a lot of people have been expecting and predicting that he could be replaced. Some folks even saying mid-season. So far, though, second place looked pretty good. He made some passes on the Ferraris and George Russell. I got to ask you, when it comes to Sergio Perez, Isha, is this enough to silence the doubters, or do you see potential trouble ahead for Sergio Perez?
I wouldn't exactly see that I see potential. I wouldn't exactly say that I see potential trouble, but I don't know if it's enough to silence the doubters from last season either. Just looking at today's performance, it was a pretty good job. He didn't start in second, but he did finish in second. And he did overtake a few cars. He overtook the Mercedes, the Ferrari. So it was a good run from him. And looking back at last season, there were certain races where he had very good job done, and then other races like the Mexican Grand Prix that turned out to be disasters for him. Um, but I think we really just have to wait and see how the next few races go to determine what the rest of the season's gonna be like. But I think that so far he's definitely started 2024 on the right foot, and I think that so far, things are going his way.
He maybe hasn't silenced all the doubters, but I think he silenced some doubters over at Ferrari. I think they were pretty confident that they'd at least be able to hold off Checo and obviously not have anything for Max, but at least be able to round off the podium, I guess, was second and third. They ended up third and fourth instead, and we'll talk about Ferrari and Sainz particularly here in just a moment. But this is exactly what Sergio Perez needs to do. Obviously, Max Verstappen is going to be the favorite to win pretty much every race this year, except maybe Singapore. We'll see. But as long as he can be second or perhaps even third, be on the podium every weekend, that needs to be his goal. And if he does that, like I said, like I predicted earlier this week, I still think Checo is in prime position to finish second in the championship. Even he did it last year, even being inconsistent. That's how dominant and how far ahead Red Bull seems to be of every other constructor right now.
Now the second best, it looked like Ferrari. Charles Leclerc started on the front row. A couple of folks went with him for pick a winner, but unfortunately that was not the case. His teammate, Carlos Sainz, though, what an effort. Finished ahead of Charles Leclerc, passing him twice. Sainz had some bold moves, including getting around George Russell for position. Still, some people thought maybe he had something for the Red Bulls, but it just seemed like really third place was the best he could do. But overall, Jackson, I got to ask you, knowing that he is going to be on his way out of Ferrari at the end of the season, does Sainz seem more motivated to demonstrate his abilities?
So, he looked pretty racy today, particularly with Charles, which was, it seemed like a lot for week one. You've got a long way to go. He's still got to prove himself as worthy of a ride for 2025, which I think he is, but he has to prove that, to everybody involved. I think over the course of the season, you might see that scale of like teammate to selfishness, tip a little bit as we get further along. But yeah, he definitely seems very motivated here at race one, making some big moves on his teammate, but paid off, got himself on the podium. Charles didn't. So there you go.
Yeah, I think Jackson explained it pretty well. Sainz was definitely more motivated to show off his skills. The thing at the forefront of his mind definitely right now is securing a seat for 2025. We know a lot of drivers are going to be out of seats by the end of the season. That means there's going to be a lot of spots open, and that's definitely what Sainz is trying to secure right now. And I think along the way, he's also trying to show that he's the better Ferrari driver. Today's race, the fight that they had, Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz, reminded me a little bit of Monza from last season. Um, and so I think that Carlos is definitely trying to prove his abilities, and right now he's just trying to secure a seat for 2025 more than just trying to have a good season in 2024.
Securing a seat for 2025 will be huge for him. For a while, it looked like George Russell, who he was fighting with, might have something for the Red Bulls. He was up to second place at one point, but eventually fell to fifth, had a couple off-track incidents. Hamilton, seventh place, really nothing going on. The only driver between the two Mercedes was Lando Norris. At one point, Toto, during the race coverage, he just looked dejected, and the post-race interview said it's clear they might be the third fastest. Isha, is this a sign of trouble for Mercedes in 2024?
Yeah, I think it definitely is. Last season they had a very bad car. Everybody was very vocal about it, and then this season so far, you're not seeing the good signs that Mercedes is looking for. George Russell started in third, but he did finish fifth, and Lewis Hamilton seemed to be struggling the whole race. Toto Wolff, as you mentioned, Joe, did seem very dejected. He looked frustrated. So I think that this is definitely not how Mercedes wanted to start the new year. Um, I think that it is a sign that they're going to have some troubles. And as for the comment about whether they're going to be third fastest, I think that, we have to wait and see, because I know that we're going to be talking about McLaren in a bit, and they seem to struggle this race. But, I think that Mercedes is also in for some trouble. And I think that this just goes to show why Lewis Hamilton made the move of switching to Ferrari next year.
Yeah, I need to take back something I said on the pre-race or on the prediction show earlier this week, rather. I think Ferrari are now solidly the favorites to finish second in the constructors over Mercedes. And if it were any team other than Ferrari, because I never underestimate Ferrari's ability to mess things up, I would say that they are certainly going to finish second, but they have the second fastest car. I think that's pretty clear. George Russell dropped some positions, obviously, couldn't hang with the Ferrari's race pace. And Lewis Hamilton looks like he's even more struggling with that car than Russell is. And like we mentioned, this is kind of a lame duck year for him because we know he's going to Ferrari in 2025. So certainly not how they wanted to start their final year together of this incredibly successful partnership. And unfortunately, based on how the last couple of years have gone since these new regulations came in, I think it's going to be a struggle for them to try to match certainly Red Bull's pace, but even Ferrari's pace. I think they're solidly the number 3 team right now.
Now, as you mentioned, McLaren, a lot of people are anticipating big things for them. I even predicted on the F1 prediction show last week that they need to come out fast. Not exactly what they probably were hoping for. I mean, they got points, but 6th place, 8th place, not ideal. Jackson, got to ask you, is this an acceptable finish for McLaren, or do they leave disappointed?
I mean, they certainly left points on the table. And that, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is Oscar Piastri's pit stop, where that pretty directly gave the spot to Lewis Hamilton, that slow stop. So that's a spot you can fix some things. But I mean, behind Red Bull, I mean, the pecking order, Red Bull, Ferrari, and then it's going to be Mercedes and McLaren, at least how it looks right now, going at it for that 3rd constructor spot. So I would say this is disappointing in the way that they gave up those points to Lewis. And I mean, who knows if that'll come around at the end of the season.
Yeah, this is definitely disappointing for McLaren. Looking at how they ended the season, the second half of the season in 2023, we were seeing Lando and Oscar having double podiums, performing pretty well, especially Lando Norris. So I know that them and the team is going to be pretty disappointed. It's the first race of the season, and you want to come out strong. You want to show everybody how good you're going to do for the rest of the season. So they're definitely disappointed right now. But I'm hoping that they can improve by the next few races because everybody's expecting a lot from McLaren. I know they've got a lot of pressure, and the drivers are definitely going to be experiencing a lot of pressure too.
Now, every driver finished this race. Valtteri Bottas, long pit stop, had issues after first lap contact. Logan Sargent went off the track. He got going, though. A lot of folks thought there might be a safety car, but that didn't occur. They had issues. But I got to say, looking at the results, Guan Yu Zhou, 11th place. Haas, they could have had a better day, but they didn't seem to be the back marker. They brought more than a spoon today, it seemed, to the knife fight. But there was some spicy drama between the V-Carb drivers of Yuki Tsunoda and Daniel Ricciardo. Isha, starting with you, what surprises stand out or other storylines from the back half of the finishing order?
Yeah, the thing that stood out the most definitely was the order that V-Carb gave to Yuki Tsunoda, telling him to pull back and letting Daniel Ricciardo take his spot. I find it really strange because it happened at the end of the race. Believe there were only 3 laps left when they gave the order. And you could see that Yuki Tsunoda was quite frustrated with it. He was very vocal about it too. And him and Daniel Ricciardo said things after the race as well. So I honestly don't understand the point of the move happening that late, especially because the only really thing that came out of it was increased tension between the 2 drivers, and it's only the first race of the season, so it's not a good start for V-Carb. But other than that, I think the incidents that happened at the start of the race between Bottas and Sargent, I think that those were the 2 real instances that stood out to me.
I think a finisher kind of lower down the ranks I'll look at is Alex Albon. He's put together some decent days, even in Williams not being the fastest cars. Today he was talking on the radio about some difficulty making adjustments with the new Williams wheel. So I'll be curious to see how Albon does, in the next few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing that stands out to me is what is going on with Alpine. I mean, that team, being a works team, the only team running Renault engines this year, maybe Andretti should be thankful that their bid got denied until they can come in with Cadillac, because these engines certainly don't seem to be doing very much right now. So I think, again, looking at how, Nico Hulkenberg had a great qualifying run. Maybe Haas aren't quite in the bottom of the basement right now. I think Alpine are certainly in a situation where they have a lot of work to do to fix that car. The only 2 drivers that finished behind their driver pairing each had some issues of their own today, but they had to try to work back from. So that's what stands out to me. And what also stands out to me is I think the front half and the back half are pretty evenly split. If you look at the race results today, if you just swapped Lando Norris and Lewis Hamilton, we'd have Red Bull 1-2, Ferrari 3-4, Mercedes 5-6, McLaren 7-8, and then Aston Martin 9-10. So I think that aside from that switch that you would have to make, like I just mentioned, the top 5 from last year are pretty solidly the top 5 from this year again. And then there's a clear mark to the second half of the field with the other 5 teams trying to work their way up towards the front and squeak out as many points as they can whenever they can. So those are the 2 things that stand out to me right now. I think our field is pretty evenly split, despite it being perhaps closer than ever before. The pecking order hasn't changed all that much, but Alpine have a ton of work to do. Otherwise, it's going to be a miserable year for that team.
It's going to be really interesting tomorrow on Grid Life Wrap-Up Sunday. We'll have more post-race coverage of Formula One after the NASCAR wrap-up tomorrow. But that's where we're going to turn to Isha, Las Vegas.
That's right, Joe. Shifting gears over to NASCAR now. The shorter West Coast swing is underway for NASCAR, and Las Vegas is kicking off the 2-race swing. Jackson has some favorites in the field, unlike Daytona and the reconfigured Atlanta. Now, 8 past winners will be participating in this race. Leading all active drivers with wins here are Brad Keselowski and Joey Logano with 3. Keselowski is currently 34th in the point standings after 2 33rd place finishes, his worst start to a Cup Series season. So Jackson and Ben, is Keselowski a favorite to win or at least rebound and get a top 10 finish?
I think Keselowski's definitely a favorite. His 4 race results at Vegas with RFK, he finished 24th, 17th, 17th, and 4th. And I think that kind of shows the rise of RFK. And in terms of Keselowski being a favorite, we said it at Daytona, we said it at Atlanta, now we're saying it at Vegas. I don't know how long we're going to take this into the season, but we have to assume at some point this year, Keselowski is going to break through and match what Chris Buescher did last year. So might not be a win this week, but yeah, I think Keselowski top 10 is pretty solid.
Yeah, Jackson, I agree. I don't know that he's going to go straight from finishing in, what is it, roughly the bottom 5 there, down in 33rd to winning the race, or maybe even a top 5. But a top 10, I think, is not an unrealistic goal. Keselowski's had a lot of success here in the past, and RFK has certainly turned it around since he came on, not only as a driver, but as a part owner as well. So I think that this is a great opportunity for him to rebound here as we truly get onto our first traditional mile and a half that actually races like a mile and a half, even though we were at one last weekend in Atlanta. Obviously, it's nothing like what we're going to experience this weekend in Vegas.
Yep, and now looking at Brad Keselowski again, being in 34th does indicate how poor of a start he's having so far. He is still behind David Reagan in the points, and Reagan only did 1 race. Now, 1 spot ahead of him is Joey Logano, who is 31st in the point standings. He's had 2 front row starts, but also was involved in 2 crashes, and he was given a penalty for an illegal glove. Now, this is the first time since 2013 that Logano did not have a top 10 finish in at least one of the first 2 races of the season. So Ben, starting with you, does Logano change his approach to the weekend to avoid trouble?
If it were some other driver in the field, I would think maybe you would just want to go out there and make sure you run all the laps and finish the race and don't do anything too risky or take any unnecessary risks. Given that you've had this start to the year that you've had, you just want to get to the finish of the race and make sure that you do that and bring the car home in one piece. But Joey Logano is not one of those drivers that I think that's in his DNA. I think Joey Logano is somebody that tries to maximize every race weekend, every opportunity that he has. I think that obviously, given that this is the era of NASCAR that we're in, the playoff system that we have, all it takes is 1 win, and you can forget about all those bad finishes that you have in the first 26 races. I don't think that that's going to change Joey Logano's approach at all. Now, he certainly is going to be hoping for a much better result and bounce back from the controversy with his webbed glove and everything that's gone on the first 2 weeks. The car has clearly shown the speed. Now it's just up to him to actually bring it home in one piece and get to the finish line.
Yeah, 100%, Ben. I agree with everything you said there. I mean, he's a 2-time champion. He knows what he's doing. The fact it's been a decade since he went the first races of the season without a top 10 shows the level that he's at. And I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, I mean, it's about racking up playoff points. Maybe this is a tough start to getting into that regular season top 10 bonus, but yeah, 1 win and suddenly you're flying to the top of the playoff leaderboard. So I think, maybe if you end up at a point where you're thinking about flipping a stage or you're looking at a 50-50 call, maybe swing the way of points. But I still expect Logano to do his thing. He knows what he's doing at this point.
Yep, and Keselowski and Joey Logano are both in Group B for qualifying. The race for the pole should be interesting, but the last time the pole sitter won was back in 2009. Now, Kyle Busch is the only driver to win at Las Vegas from the pole position. Busch is the points leader, and he leads active drivers in Las Vegas with the most top five and tied with most top tens with Martin Truex Jr. So, Jackson and Ben, is this the first test for RCR to see where they stack with the competition?
Yes, and I'm very interested to see what RCR brings this week. Last year, we know they had a really hot start, particularly Kyle Busch. But last year at the playoff intermediate races, he finished 7th at Kansas in the fall last year and 3rd at Vegas last fall behind Bell and Larson. So it's not like they were that far behind at the end of last season, but if they can get, again, it feels like a tale of two teams within RCR, the Kyle versus Austin Dillon situation. But it'll be interesting to see what they bring this week. It really is the first test to rebound. And also, Ford, Chevy, Toyota, kind of the Chevy bit of that puzzle right here.
Yeah, well, I'd say to Jackson's point, it's even a little more critical for Austin Dillon because we know Kyle Busch is capable. We know what he's capable of doing, rather. And it's his home race. He's going to be more motivated than ever to go out and have a good run. But if you compare his season to Austin Dillon's season last year, I would say there really is no comparison. Austin Dillon was not even, on the same planet as Kyle Busch in terms of being competitive and, racking up wins and top fives and top tens. Dillon just hasn't been able to do that at near the level that Kyle Busch had. And it was only Kyle Busch's first year at the team. So critical weekend for Austin Dillon, wanting to make sure that he doesn't have a repeat of last season and can, again, as we get into what is really, I think, the first true test for everybody, based on how we start the season now with these first two races at Daytona and Atlanta. Really the first true test for Austin Dillon, but everybody in the field to get the season started on the right note.
Definitely, and Kyle Busch is trying to get Chevrolet their 13th win at Vegas, one behind Ford. Ford leads all manufacturers with 14 wins here at Vegas, and despite sweeping the front row in the first two races, they have yet to secure a win. Now, Ryan Blaney almost got Ford a win, but did come up short of Daniel Suarez. Ford and Toyota both have new cars here and are looking for the first win of the 2024 season. So, Ben, what are you excited about from Ford and Toyota this weekend? And where do you think they stack with Chevy?
I think Chevy might still be the favorites, but I am very excited to see Front Row Motorsports. I mean, we talked just recently about this being the first true test for RCR. Front Row have shown a lot of speed, obviously, at Daytona and Atlanta with this new strengthened alliance they have with Penske and more backing from Ford Performance than ever. I think that this is a critical weekend for them now that we're on a more traditional mile and a half. Can they keep that speed at a track type where, the smaller underfunded teams have historically struggled to match pace with the big teams in this sport? So that's going to be huge for them. And then for Toyota, I'm looking at Legacy Motor Club. Obviously, that's a brand new partnership as well. And I think it's critical for them to get their season started off on the right note as well with their 42 and 43 cars. So those are probably the two teams within those two manufacturers that I'm keeping an eye on this weekend.
Yeah, I think those are some really good stories to pick out, Ben. I think Toyota as a whole, it's kind of interesting. These first 2 weeks, they didn't show a lot of qualifying speed. They also didn't seem to have the handling enough to seriously contend for the win. Last year, they were really good on the mile and a half. So let's see if the new Toyota car can pick it up again this week at Vegas and maybe get the Toyota season rolling.
Yep, and when you combine the Trucks, Xfinity, and Cup Series, Nevada has 97 National Series races. With all three here, the Cup Series would be the 100th event in Nevada. So, Jackson, what memories from Vegas stand out to you?
For better or worse, the first thing that came to mind was the Joey Logano Kyle Busch tussle from a few years ago in turns 3 and 4. I think another thing that stands out, I guess I'll stick with the Busch trend in Las Vegas, but Kurt Busch winning in Las Vegas a few years ago. Those are two that stand out to me.
Well, Jackson took mine. That was the biggest memory of Vegas for me is, first of all, I think when you think of Vegas, you think of the Busch brothers automatically. But Kurt winning in 2020, that was a really special moment for him. And one of his final wins, of course, he picked another one up at Atlanta with Ganassi and then got the win at Kansas with 23-11. And I just want to say, I hope Kurt's doing all right. I know it's got to be tough for him to, not be in the race car anymore, but he did put out a little bit of a cryptic social media post yesterday. So we'll see if anything comes of that. I know that he's still heavily involved with the Toyota family and 2311 mentoring their young drivers over there. So that's probably the biggest moment that stands out to me. That was a really heartwarming win when Kurt finally got that win in his home track.
Yeah, those are some pretty good moments. And now let's turn towards the lightning round. So for this first question, Ben, we'll start with you.
I don't know if that's just coming through on my end. I think we might be having some audio problems with the music playing. I think the question was front row motorsports, Michael McDowell and Todd Gilliland. Could we see another top 10? And I would say I would lean towards McDowell just because he's got significantly more experience than Gilliland does. But that would be my prediction. They might get one with McDowell. Todd Gilliland, as great as a start to the year that he's had, I think it's still going to take a little bit for that team to become solid top 10 contenders or threats throughout the year. So that would be my pick.
Yeah, I think realistically they're not going to get a car in the top 10. That being said, you have to acknowledge the progress that they're making, and I would not be surprised by the end of the season, even by the end of the regular season, if they are contending in the top 10 regularly on these 1.5 mile tracks.
All right, and back to you, Jackson. Does Bubba Wallace's top 5 finish rate continue or end at Vegas?
I mean, I want to say that it continues. It feels tough to start the season with 3 straight top 5s, but if you remove the first 2 weeks and you say we're going to Vegas, I mean, my answer is yes. I feel like Bubba can get another top 5 this week.
I wouldn't put it past him. Obviously, Bubba Wallace has been running the top 5 more frequently than he ever has, but it is very tough to start the season on a stretch like that. And it's a different type of racetrack than what we've seen the first 2. So I would say, again, not putting it past him, but I would venture to guess that it might not continue this weekend.
All right, and Ben, Colleague Racing, 1 top 10 from AJ Allmendinger at Daytona, another at Vegas with Derek Kraus and/or Daniel Hemrick. What do you think?
I would be pleasantly shocked, if it's Derek Kraus, considering he's making his Cup Series debut today. So congratulations to him on this opportunity. I'm hoping for the best for him, but I think a top 10 is an unrealistic goal for pretty much anybody coming in to make their Cup Series debut, unless your name is Shane Van Gisbergen and you're running the first ever street race for the NASCAR Cup Series in the Project 91 car. But I don't see it happening from Kraus, and to be honest, I don't really see it happening from Daniel Hemrick either. I think Colleagues Cup program still has a lot of work to do to get to where their Xfinity program has established themselves. So I think a top 10 might be out of reach for that team this weekend.
Yeah, I agree. If I'm not giving the front row a top 10, I can't give Colleague a top 10. I think Colleague feels like a team that might have missed out on these drafting track weeks by giving out a win to Hendrick and one to Trackhouse. That's a chance that Colleague could have got one done. I don't think Vegas is going to fare any better for them.
All right, Jackson. Chris Buescher enters with only 1 stage point in 2024. Do you think he's going to score more?
I hadn't really thought about this, but I went through and looked at his races last year, even his wins. Chris Buescher is not great at scoring stage points, and so I think that might be something that he can work on this year to take him into the championship tier. So I think if Ford has the pace this weekend, I would think Chris Buescher, he could lock down some stage points.
Yeah, Ford certainly has a lot of pace this year, and I think we'll know better what the odds of this happening are after we get to qualifying. If he can hold a top 10 starting spot or whatever, if he has to come from the mid-pack or the back of the field in order to try to score those stage points, it's going to make it a lot less likely. So again, this one's tough without knowing where they're going to line up tomorrow, but I would say based on the speed that Ford have shown this year and RFK, the steps forward that they've taken, I think he could certainly increase that number from just the 1 stage point this weekend here.
All right, Ben and Jackson, here is the final question for the Lightning stage. Noah Gragson is -6 points and Ryan Preece has 0 points entering this weekend. Who do you think will have the most points after?
Well, as I saw on social media this weekend, congratulations to all 3 of us on the screen, everybody watching this not live on the playback. You have more points than Noah Gragson does this year in NASCAR Cup, so well done to you. Unfortunate for Stewart Haas. I mean, my goodness, they have been just absolutely hammered with penalties in the next gen era here. And the team has kind of been in free fall mode. It's going to be very interesting to see. I've seen some rumors that Ford may be strengthening their relationship with Front Row. It's not coming as a coincidence that this is coming in a contract year for SHR, and they may be considering parting ways at the end of the year. We'll see if anything comes of those rumors in the coming weeks. But I got to say, I would lean towards Ryan Preece only because when you're in the back half of the field, you're not scoring too many points, and that means 6 points is an even greater margin to overcome. He's on 0 to -6. I think that gives him a pretty sizable advantage over Noah Gragson at this point.
Yeah, I'm also going with Ryan Preece, basically for the same reason you said there, Ben, is like there can't be a ton of movement. And for SHR, coming into this year, all this refresh they're trying to do, and now you have a car with 0 points and a car with less than 0 points coming into the third race of the season. They're going to have to go for wins at this point on some wacky strategy calls. But to answer the question, Preece, I think it's going to come out of this week with more points.
This is so unusual. I think the last time we saw it this deep into the year after a couple of races was, Michael Waltrip getting penalized at Daytona in 2007 and being on -27 points for the next 10 or 11 races because he couldn't even qualify and score the bare minimum. He used to get 34 points just for starting the race. So if he had just made one of those races, he could have gotten out of a negative. But it does look shocking to see somebody with a negative points total. We don't see it that often, but hopefully Gragson can pick up at least a small haul of points this weekend and get back on the plus side.
All right, guys, great answers for the lightning round, but let's end it now by looking at the sports book for NASCAR entering qualifying. So Kyle Larson is at plus 450 as the heavy favorite over William Byron and Kyle Busch, who are both at plus 900. Now, Ryan Blaney and Denny Hamlin have the highest Ford and Toyota at plus 1,000. Keselowski is at plus 1,400, Elliott at plus 1,800, Wallace at plus 2,000, and Suarez at plus 4,500. And then we have Austin Dillon and Ryan Preece at the end with plus 10,000 and plus 20,000 respectively. So Jackson and Ben, Vegas is known as the gambling capital of the U.S. and now hosts just about every major sport. So any drivers you guys see as potential upset winners?
I think if I'm going to pick some guys up there near the favorites that aren't the favorites, I'm looking at Joey Logano and Tyler Reddick, kind of that next tier down. But if we want to go really far down the list, I'm looking at Eric Jones at plus 5,500. If Legacy Motor Club puts together some good practice laps here and you can get in before those odds shift, I think Eric Jones might be someone you could get some sneaky good odds on.
Yeah, there's a reason Kyle Larson is a heavy favorite, and I'll make that reason clear when we get into pick a winner here in just a moment. Hey, I'll put $1 on a Kaz Grala or a JJ Yeley. Crazier things have happened in this sport. 80,000, that is quite a gap there, even to Justin Haley, who's got the third longest odds there. But looking at the second half of the grid here, thank you, Joe. Trying to pick one of the bigger upsets here, but 10,000 or longer. You could go the legacy path, like Jackson just mentioned, with John Hunter Nemechek. Austin Dillon, that would be absolutely massive for RCR. But again, if I had to pick a true major upset winner, I know I just said I don't think he's going to be the front row car in the top 10, but Todd Gilliland is off to a fantastic start this year. He's led the most laps of anybody in the Cup Series, had a great run at Atlanta last weekend. I don't expect him to be able to maintain that pace, but based on front row's abilities to surprise us over the last few years, if you're looking for a long shot bet, I would say Todd Gilliland might be the one you want to keep an eye on.
Yep, great choices, guys. And the numbers that I just mentioned are from DraftKings as of 11 a.m. Saturday. If you play, just a reminder to keep it fun and responsible. But now I'll hand it over to Jackson because it is time for the fun game that we all play at Grid Network, Pick a Winner.
All right, everybody, welcome to Pick a Winner. Our leaderboard blew up this week. We went from 12 people with points to over 20 people with points. I think that's the best thing to come out of Max Verstappen's dominance, is that we can get some pick a winner points. These Max Verstappen points, we're going to track those. The Grid Network dog Kiska is going to be picking Max Verstappen every week. So if you need a benchmark that's maybe not the top of the championship, at least try to get ahead of Kiska in the standings. So this week, right now, we're here to pick NASCAR at Las Vegas. So everyone, it's time for our Pennzoil 400 pick a winner. Isha, you start us out.
Oh man, I really need some points. I'm at 16th place. Oof, I think I'm going to go with Kyle Busch for my NASCAR pick.
Solid pick. I am going to. Hendrick has been really good at Vegas the last few years. I think it's got to be a Hendrick car. I think Chase Elliott is the one that's going to get it done this week and start his rebound season with a win. Joe, you are up next.
I'm going to go with a Hendrick car. Somebody that Kyle said backed into a win. I think Alex Bowman is going to get his season going back on track and get a win at Vegas.
I'm going to keep the running theme going here with Hendrick. I'm going to go with the Vegas pick and say Kyle Larson, which probably means it's going to be William Byron, and all three of us will have picked Hendrick drivers that couldn't get the job done. But Kyle Larson's going to be my official pick, but I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, any of the Hendrick cars I think would be a solid pick for this weekend in Vegas.
All right, so there you have our team's picks for this week. Make sure to let us know your picks in the stream chats and, of course, in comments across social media. Now we are at the beginning of March, which means we're starting our new monthly challenge. Congratulations to Adam for being our February monthly champion. You're going to receive some grid stickers. Joe will be reaching out to you soon.
Very exciting time. And of course, we are just about all out of time. So a big thank you once again to our Patreon investors, Colin, Deshelle, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew for investing in us. Colin, Deshelle, Mark, and Robin, they've been investing in us almost since we started on the air a few years ago. Join them, get some Grid Network stickers. We are getting so close to 1,000 subscribers. That'll be a huge day for everyone here at the Grid Network. Can't do it without you. You can also do a one-time investment through YouTube Super Chat. Buy me a coffee. If you're watching us or we're not live, you'll see that little thanks button underneath the video on YouTube. You can make your investment there, and we'll thank you the next time we're on the air. And the easiest way to support us, hit the bell icon, subscribe, like us, share with your family and friends, comment with your pick a winner picks. Remember, you got up till the race start to submit your pick a winner picks and try to get on the leaderboard. And we got a busy show. We got tomorrow, Grid Life wrap up. Monday, Grid Encore. Big story from Vegas. Roger Cruz taking the win. You, Jackson, have any quick words about that big win?
Yeah, well, make sure you tune in. I'm sure Brandon will have a lot to say about it as well. A massive win, historic win for Roger Carruth, and thankfully gives us something to talk about in the truck race, because the truck series, much like Formula One, has been the Max Verstappen show. It's just been the Kyle Busch show every time that he gets into one of those trucks. It was still one of his Spire teammates, though, so Roger Carruth, congratulations to him. Job well done, and make sure you check out the interview that we did with him 3 years ago now. He was the first ever guest, I believe, on Life on the Grid. So great to see him taking that next step forward in his career. And I got to be honest, a little bit surprising. I didn't expect him to get a win this early in this new partnership, but he's off to a great start to the year. So more on that, as well as F3 and F2 coverage from Bahrain tomorrow, or Monday rather, on Grid Live Encore.
Yeah, pretty neat win for Raja. I remember the first time I really heard about him. I was in Charlotte in 2019, and he was racing Legends racing Legend cards on the front stretch of Charlotte. And now here we are 5 years later, and he's a Truck Series winner. It's pretty cool to watch him. He's very active on social media, very engaged with the community. So it's pretty cool to see kind of one of our own from the internet get the job done and win in the Truck Series. So congrats to him for sure.
Big congrats to Raja. And of course, that'll be Grid Encore on Monday. Then Wednesday, Grid Tonight, Kobe, Josh, Matt, they'll be on there on the latest news. And then Thursday, Isha, Ben, and I for the Women in Motorsports. And then we'll do it all over again next Saturday. And don't forget a special program on Tuesday. Left that out for last because this one, the IndyCar 2024 season prediction roundtable. Be sure to not miss that because IndyCar will be back next week. For Isha, Ben, and Jackson, I'm Joe. Thank you for watching today's program. We'll see you next time, and enjoy the races.